A closer look at Jin Ping Mei, Chapter 5, let's talk about the death of Wuhan University. Imagine a beautiful and strong woman, for various reasons, ends up marrying a man who is far worse than she expected. No matter how much inevitability it is, her heart will definitely not be ironed out, and she will definitely blame her fate. Treat yourself slowly. Many Japanese literary works have mentioned this phenomenon. A married woman will feel indebted to her unsatisfied husband when she finds a lover outside. And then she will be able to continue to be submissive, hard-working, and persistent in the marriage. Go down. These Noras who run away invisibly want to be a woman with the soul first, and then be a good wife and mother of the family. Jinlian in Jin Ping Mei has more radical demands than these women. She just wants to be a charming woman. The desire to be a good wife and mother is too far away from her. And she has never even thought about being a good wife and mother for the Wu family. Wu Da knew that he had taken advantage of this marriage, and understood that Jinlian was not willing to do anything. So he tried to smooth over this woman's injustice by being submissive and sacrificing his daughter's happiness. But Wuhan University didn't know that what Jinlian actually hated was his own incompetence. Jinlian understood that as long as she was still crowned a martial lady, no matter how much compensation she was given, she would not be able to be charming. Her resentment was already evident. Before moving, she exposed her little feet under the curtain to seduce the wandering disciples. After seeing Wusong, she tried every means to serve Wusong and wanted to get married to this man, without taking Wu Da to her heart at all. The troublesome brother Yun is like a time bomb lying in wait on the road that Wuhan University must pass. When brother Yun went for a basket of snow pears, this was the 5th episode that attracted the most attention. It can also be said to be shocked, the tragedy caused by a basket of snow pears. Therefore, the affair between Jinlian and Ximen King was exposed. Wuhan University recalled, This woman went to Mrs. Wang's house every day to make clothes and shoes, and she would be red-faced when she came back. My first wife left a girl behind, beat her up and scolded her day and night, and denied her food. She was a little crazy in the past 2 days. When she saw me, she couldn't help but do joy. An article harshly criticized the 5th chapter of The Plum in the Golden Ping as being miserable and vicious, just like a hellish text. However, in this hellish and miserable tone, there is also a little sense of comedy. Wuhan University does not deny or cover up, but quickly find evidence in his mind to corroborate brother Yun's statement to prove that he is not so stupid in the relationship between husband and wife. This is the author's good-natured ridicule of a cowardly, insignificant, and honest man. There are different interpretations of Wuhan University's "don't do joy." Some people think it refers to Jinlian, and some think it refers to Yinger. My own preference is the former, because this entire paragraph is intended to show the abnormality of Jinlian. But no matter who was talking about it, Wu Da noticed the difference in the atmosphere at home. And he couldn't wait to tell brother Yun that he wanted to send the burden and go catch the traitor. When he said this, he showed a sense of excitement that was provoked. This excitement made him brave, giving people the impression that he was shaking the mane on his neck and preparing to drive away the invading lion on the African grassland. He was not as silent as when he encountered Zhang Dahu stealing Golden Lotus, nor was he like Lin Chong, who thought he was unlucky. Before his marriage, he wrote a letter of divorce out of self-preservation, divorcing his wife to avoid disaster, or simply divorced his wife to avoid disaster. If you think about it, like the bastards in Dream of Red Mansions, as long as you have wine and meat, everything else doesn't matter. Why is Wuhan University suddenly so inflated and dares to challenge Ximen King, the representative of evil forces? First, at this time, he had left Zhang Dahu. Zhang Dahu himself had died, and the Golden Lotus was essentially his personal property. How could he easily transfer this private property? Second, he has his brother Wu Song as a backer. Before, he was obedient and honest. But now, his brother is back, and through special recruitment, This brother has entered the system and established a relationship with the county magistrate. He could only carry all the wind and frost swords in his life by himself. Not anymore. Behind him stood his brother, who was feared by everyone, and his brother looked after him like that. He felt very safe. Third, Brother Yun took off his fig leaf in public. Jiang Dahu was caught sneaking before, and Wu Da couldn't say anything. Jiang Dahu gave it to him from Wu Da. You can't allow people to sneak, otherwise, why would they give it to you? Of course, Wu Da understands this. Besides, when Jiang Dahu was sneaking around, only he knew about it, so it wasn't a huge loss of face. But it's different now. Now, someone mentioned it to his face and mocked him for being a fat and droopy duck. You won't be angry even if I cook you in a pot. Although Wu Da is an honest man, it does not prevent him from wanting the face of a man. And because he is just an honest man and lacks strategy, sometimes he just relies on his courage and wants to occupy the moral high ground and call Kuki, come. Everyone will give him great justice at Wuhan University. Fourth, the world of Jin Ping Mei is actually a reflection of the real world in which the author lives. In that era, adultery was not only morally condemned, but also a cold legal case. In Zhao County, Zhang Qiao sends yellow oranges to Wu Zuanjiao to pay Bai Qian. Ling Shuchu tells readers about a fire hoarding scam, using his wife or prostitute to defraud the wandering children of their money. The most critical part is the first step is for the husband to catch the adulterer. First, the husband takes a knife to kill him. In order to protect the husband's interests, lynching is allowed, and the adulterer and the man or woman can be killed on the spot. This step alone scares many children into silence. Then, the husband has to be kidnapped and sent to the government. Generally, no one wants to show up and be convicted. I'd rather go to jail than do it privately. Even in Jin Ping Mei, there were similar incidents. Han Daoguo's wife Wang Liuer and Han Daoguo's brother Han committed adultery, and the neighbors kidnapped them and sent them to the yamen. The reason why Wuhan University showed a kind of excitement about being provoked is actually because it has legal backup. Ximen King is very immoral in reality. In this episode, when he heard that Wuhan University came to catch an adulterer, his first reaction was to hide under the bed. He is a majestic man, with a figure similar to Jia Yukin in Red Mansions. Either the bed is high from the ground, or he moves quickly. Subconsciously, he also feels that this is immoral, and is afraid of facing the censure of the rightful owner. At the same time, as a traitor, husband, even if you are familiar with the government on weekdays and can control the sky with one hand, in this matter, you mainly follow the right opinion, and legal support is to support the right opinion. Some readers blamed Wu Da, who had been kicked out of his heart. Lying in the hospital bed, he should wait quietly for Wu Song to come back, and should not bluff Jinlian with words. But when a person faces a desperate situation, or when he feels that he has reached a desperate situation, he will look for every possibility to save himself. Jinlian can't count on her, and neither can her daughter. Jinlian and Ximen King agreed to let him die by himself. During the period of recuperation, not only would he not see a doctor, but he would also not be given food. This meant that he would either die of illness or starve to death. So he told Yinger, "You little bitch, you don't want to die with him. I say, if you give him water and food, it's all on you." On weekdays, Jinlian was allowed to beat and scold Yinger. But when his daughter was beaten and scolded, the father stood by and ignored her. So, how could the daughter be willing to risk her father at this time? Yinger is very silent. The only sentence in the book that she said to her uncle at the end is, "Uncle, I'm afraid." She lost her mother when she was young and followed her father, but she became a victim of her father's tribute to her stepmother. If the father still has a trace of warmth in his heart, and secretly comforts Yinger, Yinger won't be indifferent to seeing her father's misery. Wu Da risked everything to appease Jinlian, but in the end, it was his last glimmer of hope that was blocked. No, Wuhan University believes that its life is in the hands of its brothers. He moved out of Wusong and stated that if he was given food, drink, and medical treatment now, he could ignore Jinlian's past. But the obedient people only felt Wusong's power and ignored the concessions he had made in exchange for humiliation. How could those people believe his promise? Readers who like Jin Ping Mei will probably make the same judgment and cannot bear to criticize Simon King and Jinlian because it's Simon's crime to bring arsenic. It's Jinlian's crime to use medicine in the second part. It's instigating in the first and cleaning up in the end. The general cloud is that it is Wang Pa's crime. It is difficult for any reader who has read the entire book not to have some feelings for Simon King and Pan Jinlian. Especially in the later chapters, Simon King died young in middle age, and the big family he worked so hard to manage fell apart. And Pan Jinlian is the little match girl in Andersen's fairy tale. With nothing to rely on, and her parents regard them as a tool to make money. They can only huddle in a small corner, dreaming about Christmas trees, roast ducks, loving grandma, or maybe a majestic man. However, Jinlian was luckier than the little girl in that she lived a luxurious life in Ximen Mansion for several years. But we know that she would not be able to escape Wusong's knife, sooner or later. This means that no matter how hard she struggles and works towards happiness, happiness is not willing to hug her. What kind of person you are, you have to bear the consequences. This illusory sense of powerlessness against fate and the ultimate defeat will partially eliminate the reader's disgust and hatred for the heroine, Pan Jinlian. So everyone hated Wang Po even more. The reason why I hate Mrs. Wang even more is that she is so old and has no kind heart at all. Looking at her explanations to Pan Jinlian, how to buy arsenic, how to cook rags, and how to hide traces, I think she is too familiar with this job. The women in A Dream of Red Mansions are not very good yet, but they have been rejected by Baoyu and turned into dead eyes. When Wang Po arrives at the Red Mansion, what will Cao's Weekend describe her as? Jinlian and Pinger also belong to the Twin Peaks confrontation. Two waters divide, writing style. They both hate their current husbands, admire Simon King, and rush to be Simon King's little wife. The difference is that Hanako died of natural death. I lost my money, got typhoid fever, first I saw a doctor, then I was sick, and finally I died. Ordinarily, the relationship with Pinger is not too big, but when Pinger died, he always said that Hua Zixu was in the dark and asked for her life. According to Freud, this was Li Pinger's subconscious feeling of guilt, and she felt that she owed Hua Zixu. But Jinlian was different. She never thought that the ghost of Wun University would have the courage to ask for her life. The reason she doesn't feel guilty is that she thinks everyone in the world owes her. And there is a bottomless pit in her heart that will never be filled, and moral ethics cannot restrain her. In fact, in the world of Jin Ping Mei, the moral and ethical sense at the bottom is as weak as that of Simon King. Only the honest man from Wun University fantasizes about being armed with the moral and ethical sense. Jinlian ignores moral ethics, but this does not prevent her from using moral ethics to cover up her evil deeds. She was poisoned by Wu Da with her own hands, and she shouted at midnight to support her family. The author is also very humorous. He is afraid that readers will misunderstand, so he patiently explains how a woman's crying, weeping, and howling are all sad ways. As a stepmother, Pan Jinlian beats and scolds her stepdaughter Yinger day and night, and refuses to eat, and no neighbors come forward to stop her. Neighbors are not just the same as in a few words. Once something happens to a neighbor, everyone will work together to send the perpetrator to the government. The neighbors in Jin Ping Mei are all cowards who don't do their own business and don't open their mouths. Wu Da caught an adulterer and Simon King committed a crime. He walked out of the noisy neighborhood, and no one from the neighborhood came out to stop him. At the beginning of the 6th chapter, the neighbors knew clearly that Wu Da died in an unknown manner. So they shouldn't just consult her, so they just tried to deal with it as a favor, and then dispersed. Some readers also like to compare Pan Jinlian of Wuhan University with Han Daogu and his family, but they are actually different. Pan Jinlian did not agree with Wuhan University, but Wang Liwer always believed that he and Han Daogu were one family. Whether it was his cheating uncle or becoming Ximen King's concubine, his goal was to be happy and make money from beginning to end. Although some neighborhood kids couldn't bear to see Wang Liwer and Honor having an affair, and were kidnapped and sent to the Yamen. The reason was more because they couldn't steal Wang Liwer and couldn't eat the fishy food. Rather than to correct social trends and maintain mainstream moral values, we cannot blame these neighbors. The general environment is like this. Everyone is struggling in a small space. In the face of powerful forces, interests, and temptations, we must make shrewd calculations to avoid losing more than we gain. Live collectively as the gray paint on the palette. A person's youth is the age of poetry and the age of flying. Just living is not enough. You also need sunshine, freedom, and the fragrance of a little flower. It's just that real life is far from that simple. On the opposite side of the sunshine, freedom and fragrance of flowers that Jinlian pursues. Wu Da is like a stumbling block blocking her path to happiness. Although the stumbling block is disgusting, it will never cost her life. The price is to fulfill her. If Pan Jinlian could go back to that midnight, put aside her anger, calm down, and ask Wu Da to give her a divorce letter. If Wu Da was unwilling, she could ask Ximen King to give her more money. If she were benevolent and righteous to the extreme, she could also give Wu Da justice, get well, settle the children, and write the contract. According to Wu Song's character, when Wu Song comes back, his brother won't let him make trouble, and Wu Song doesn't necessarily have to make trouble. Even if he wants to make trouble, it's not related to human life. Everything is arranged properly, and then he can go with Ximen King and be together for a long time. Is it a better solution? In fact, when many people discuss things together, the suggestions are often the result of the thinking of the strongest person, but are not the best solution for the parties involved. For example, the short-term couples method and the long-term couples method proposed by Mrs. Wang are reflections of her life experience. Perhaps she had experienced the long-term relationship as a couple before, but this plan was really not suitable for Jinlian. The risk of doing this is that once his deeds are exposed, it will be more likely to anger Wu Song, who has a very high force value, and do things that Jinlian cannot bear. Thinking of a way to immortality for Wu Da. Maybe let her go. What is not yours after all. Let her go. Raise your daughter well, and live a happy life. Such a decision may be difficult, but when you take your eyes off beautiful women, or cut out the unrealistic thoughts in your mind, you will find that you are actually freeing yourself. After all, there are still so many fluffy pancakes waiting to be made in life. A closer look at Jin Ping Mei, Chapter 6. Look at the storm that seems to be coming. People live for life itself, not for anything other than living. So is Wuhan University a person who lives for the sake of living? His lifelong dream? No. How could he have any dreams? He was just selling, cooking cakes, and living his own small life in the most ordinary way, but fate refused to let him live in peace. Just because he looks ugly and has no abilities, he has a beautiful wife, Pan Jinlian. Perhaps, in this world, beauty is a relatively scarce resource. If this resource is enjoyed by unmatched people, it will cause endless trouble. Therefore, even living a good life has become a luxury for the incompetent Wuhan University, and his death, due to such factors, was particularly full of legends and gossip, sadness, and unwillingness. In the 6th chapter, with this kind of brushstrokes, he lightly writes about the life of a little person after he was killed. At dawn, Mrs. Wang used the money to buy a coffin, some incense, candles, paper money, etc. When she returned, she lit a portable lamp in front of Wu Daling. All the neighbors came to visit, and the lady hid her pink face and pretended to cry. The neighbors asked, "Why did the old man die because of his illness?" The woman replied, She was distressed because of the illness, and she didn't want to get worse day by day, and she didn't expect to get better. Unfortunately, the drum died in the middle of the night last night. It was so painful, he choked up and pretended to cry again. The neighbors knew that this person died in an unknown manner, so they couldn't just consult her. Everyone advised, "You are dead, and you should live in peace. Madam, save yourself the trouble, the weather is hot." The woman had to pretend to be grateful, and everyone dispersed. The author Lanling Zhaoxiaxing did not explore everyone's psychology, but I always feel a faint chill spreading between the lines. You see, there seems to be no need to feel guilty when faced with a life that is as cheap as a piece of shit in the eyes of everyone. What role does a person like Wu Da live in? What's the point? It was obviously shocking when he was killed, but looking here, it feels like a dead ant. Pan Jinlian felt extremely comfortable, but she still had to perform well in order to save her face. The face must be concealed, even though there are no tears on that pink face. But there must be a strategy for dealing with the crowd. Unfortunately, my husband is very distressed, and I am also in great pain. We can almost imagine it. Grandma Wang looked sad and regretful at the side. But the people who were watching melon eating were just watching the fun, who really wanted to find out the culprit. So you have to act the role well, and just say enough about the scene. Anyway, the trait of loving gossip has always been the favorite of the people in the market. This murder was carried out in front of everyone, pretending to be a normal funeral. Look at this time. A key figure is about to appear. This man's name is He Jiu. He is a coroner in the county government, and he plays the role of forensic doctor in today's terms. Wu Da's death was so mysterious that everyone in the neighborhood probably knew about it, but other people's suspicions will always remain suspicions. Only by inviting an authoritative person like He Jiu to conduct an autopsy can the final conclusion be made. Let's say that when He Jiu arrived at Sipai, he walked slowly to the entrance of Zishi Street and met Zimon King. He shouted, "Where is Lao Jiu going?" He Jiu replied, "I just go to the front to bury the body of Wu Dalang, who sells cooking cakes." Zimon King said, "Stop and talk." In this way, He Jiu and Zimon King came to the tavern. Zimon King ordered to get some wine and invited He Jiu to take a seat. When the two of them drank enough, Zimon King took out a piece of snowflake silver from his sleeve, put it in front of him and said, "Old Jiu Shu, if it's too minor, I'll give you another reward tomorrow." He Jiu crossed his hands and said, "A villain has no ability at all. How dare he be given a silver tael by a high official? If a high official has an order, a lowly person will not dare to resign." Does He Jiu here really not know Zimon King's intention of throwing out the money? No, he was just waiting for him to say it. In this world, there was never the love of money for no reason, let alone the Zimon officials who were superior to him. Sure enough, Zimon King said in an understatement, nothing else. His family had some hard-earned money for a while. It's just that nowadays, everything is done to bury Wu Da's body, including a brocade quilt to cover it. Human life is of paramount importance. Zimon King said it was a big deal easily. He Jiu responded more confidently, "What's the matter with me? These trivial matters are of no great importance. How can you dare to accept money from a high official?" Suddenly I remembered a detail. In water margin, this He Jiu was called Uncle He Jiu. He still had a faint sense of loyalty, and he even picked up 2 bones from Wuhan University as evidence. This was certainly for himself. There is no way out, because Wu Song is afraid that he will be implicated in settling scores in the future, but the author still gives this character some kind attitude. But in Jin Ping Mei, He Jiu is He Jiu. He has long known that Zimon King has collusion with the officialdom and is a person who can even control the government. Therefore, he only sees money in his eyes, although he is a funeral corpse officer, but couldn't help that he was short of money. So, He Jiu thought again, I need some money to worry about in these 2 days, and if I can use it, I can just take care of it in the meantime. That's it. Money once again showed its great power, wrecking He Jiu's conscience. slip on the chopping block of morality, and fell firmly into the money eyes of Ximen officials. He Jiu turned around and slowly arrived at the Wu family. After looking at the corpse, I saw Wu Da, who was poisoned, and saw the beauty of Jinlian. He became more and more like a mirror in his heart, so much so that the two ignorant Huo family members next to him questioned, why is his face purple, with teeth marks on his lips, and bleeding in his mouth? He Jiu quickly stopped and shouted, don't talk nonsense. The weather has been very hot for 2 days. Why don't you move around? A gourd carrying the coffin was put into the coffin and nailed twice with long-lasting nails. Poor Wuhan University was declared legally dead by He Jiu. At 5 o'clock in the morning on the third day, all the fire families came to carry the coffin, and a few neighbors paid their respects to each other. The woman put on her filial piety and rode in a sedan chair, pretending to cry, supporting the family all the way. When he came to the cremation field outside the city, he was taught to hold fire and burn the coffin. After a while, they burned everything and scattered the bones in the pond. It turned out that Ximen King was in charge of the restaurant and paid for the rectification. The writing style of this paragraph is indifferent, as if describing ordinary family affairs, but it is horrifying to read, especially the sentence, it was burned clean. All of a sudden, and I suddenly felt the sadness of Wuhan University. The beloved wife cried bitterly all the way. It was nothing more than an illusion to cover up. Oops, if you die like this, can your soul be at peace? In this way, the play is basically finished. All the fig leaves have been removed one by one, and Pan Jinlian doesn't need to worry about anything. She threw the Wu Daling tablet aside and covered it with a piece of white paper, without picking up the rice. Every day I just put on heavy makeup, wear colorful clothes, and look cute. Seeing that Ximen King didn't come for 2 days, he scolded him, how could you, a heartless thief, leave your slave and go to another house to marry someone you love? He left your slave in the cold and didn't come to pick him up. Ximen King said, I have something to do in the past 2 days. I went to the temple today and bought some jewelry and clothes for you. The woman was full of joy. There is a saying, the most incomprehensible things in the world are the sun and the human heart. Jin Ping Mei is so direct to the heart, so there is no need for any tenderness. In Jinlian's eyes, what does the death of Wuhan University mean? The most important thing is to enjoy yourself in time, and what you look forward to the most is Mr. Ximen's secret but passionate love. Moreover, Mr. Ximen's money once again showed its power. When he heard that he was buying jewelry and emerald clothes for himself, he immediately felt full of heart. Rejoice! Sex and money always complement each other and are tied. But how can they forget someone? In this world, Wusong, the only brother connected by blood to Wuhan University who is fearless and kills people like chickens. Therefore, this time the plot seems simple, but Mars is hidden. Let's say that the mother-in-law walked to the street with a basket to buy wine and meat. It was early May and it was raining heavily. I saw that the red sun was suddenly covered by black clouds, and it rained heavily. The woman was buying a bottle of wine and a basket of vegetables, fruits, etc. When she encountered the heavy rain on the street, she hurriedly hid under the eaves of someone else's house, wrapped her head in a handkerchief, and her clothes got soaked. After waiting for a while, the rain's feet slowed down a little, and the clouds flew home in big steps. The rain came suddenly. It was also a testament to Wu Er's late arrival. Wu Er arrived late, so that before Ximen King could marry Pan Jinlian, he married Meng Yulu first. Takayuro, who had no grain of sand in his eyes, was blocked on the road because of the rain. This younger brother, looking at the heavy rain, would never have thought in his dreams that his brother was no longer alive. That Pan Jinlian was also a little cool, and she failed to marry Ximen King immediately, but was finally married first by Meng Yulu. This time, there was no mention of the poor child Yinger of the Wu family. It is unimaginable how the child witnessed with horror and helplessness in the scenes of his father being murdered, his uncle not returning, and his stepmother secretly rejoicing. All this, anyway, Wun University just disappeared from this world. That day, Simon King stayed at the woman's house until late at night. He wanted to go home, so he left a few taels of silver to pay for the expenses with the woman. The woman couldn't hold him back. Again and again, Simon King put on a blindfold and went out. The woman lowered the curtain, closed the door, and drank wine with Mrs. Wang again before leaving. I want to say, Pan Jinlian, if you lower the curtain like this every day, close the door, and listen to Wu Song's instructions, how can there be any trouble in the future? Return to the starting point with nothing and die tragically? I want to talk about Simon King. Looking at the current Yingying Yanyan, who is like a fish in water, with both money and sex, how could I have thought that in the future, he would be defeated and die miserably in the martial arts competition? After all, death is the only thing in this world that is fair to everyone. There are all kinds of painful ways to die. In Jin Ping Mei, although this is a story for another time, I really want to say, is it just raining now? The real storm is still behind, although they are still alive and well for the time being. A closer look at Chapter 7 of Jin Ping Mei life is rushing towards the unknown darkness. As the saying goes, there are 4 kinds of people in the world who cannot be provoked, no matter how difficult it is to get rid of them. Those 4 are them: the wandering monk, the beggar, the idle man, and the yapo. The above 3 kinds of people are still acceptable, but the yapo is the one who wears the house. The women who enter the house are afraid that when they are calm, 10 or 9 times, they will try to stop him from coming and going. In the book, Jin Ping Mei, Simon King is the protagonist, followed by the 3 flowers and jade women in the title. Simon King's 3 concubines and maids, Pan Jinlian, Li Pinger, and Pang Chunmai, each have 1 character in their names. It became Jin Ping Mei. Once again, it's the helper man and the matchmaker woman. Matchmakers are only slightly better to women than Earl Ying is to Simon King. Wu Yuiniang lost her matchmaker when Sao and others, and had no good girls. As for Simon King, without middle-aged and elderly women such as Wang Po and Zhu Po, he could only become a burnt bun with women of Li Jiaoer and Li Gi's level. As for Pan Jinlian, Chunmai and others, without a matchmaker, it would be difficult for them to circulate in the human flesh market. The novel creates several very capable matchmakers. Wang Po is naturally the leader among them. When Wu Song went on a long trip, he first learned from Sun Wukong and drew a circle for his brother and sister-in-law to ward off evil spirits. No tiger, lizard, wolf, insect, monster, ghost, or monster dared to come near him. But Wang Po made some clever maneuvers and realized the prostitution opportunity she discovered. In the end, Wu Da lost her life, and Pan Jinlian changed from the Wu family's daughter-in-law to Simon's concubine. Mrs. Wang is indeed the #1 matchmaker in Qin. Compared with Mrs. Wang, Mrs. Zhu is not tough enough or bloody enough, but she is also a leader in the industry. Sister-in-law Zhu is like other matchmakers. She has another profession, which allows her to meet all kinds of girls and women and live in Qin. So she got the first piece of information. Meng Yulu couldn't stay a widow and wanted to marry again. Ordinarily, it would be impossible for Meng Yulu and Simon King, because another matchmaker introduced Meng Yulu to Shang Juran as his first wife. And Simon King has a wife, a concubine, and Pan Jinlian, who is planning to marry. But the reason why Mrs. Zhu and Mrs. Wang are big bosses in the matchmaking world is that they can create something out of nothing, create a market even if there is no market, and carve out a way out of a dead end. Sister-in-law Zhu's calculations were as follows. Most of the step-brothers did not dare to be as jealous as the main wife, and Wu Yuiniang did not dare to interfere with Simon King. Find a concubine for Simon King, Wu Yuiniang will be fine. And Simon King happened to have passed away his 3rd concubine, Zhuo Daiyuer, so didn't he need someone to fill the nest? How could people like Li Jiaoer and Sun Zhu satisfy Pan Lu and Deng Jiaoxian? Not to mention one is stupid, and the other is fat. Sister-in-law Zhu saw the other side of the matter. Since Shangju's family has not settled down, there's an opportunity for matchmaking. Most people think that Ximen King only loves women, but only Mrs. Zhu knows that Ximen King understands the importance of wealth and talent better than women. Sister-in-law Zhu found Ximen King, who was working hard to settle accounts in the herbal medicine shop. She first said that the widowed Meng Yulu had money. "I have a good penny in my hand. There are also 2 bamboo beds in Nanjing. Clothes for all seasons can't be inserted. And there are 4 or 5 boxes. Needless to say, there are gold bracelets and silver coins. And there are thousands of taels of silver in my hand. There are also 3 to 200 tubes of 3-strip cloth. Marrying a diamond king is a shortcut for a woman, and marrying a rich widow is also a man's shortcut." The founding father of the United States, Washington, married a wealthy widow. The huge estate of 17,000 acres of land undoubtedly laid a solid material foundation for becoming the founding father and creating the world. Achieving class advancement by marrying Bai Fumei is also Ximen King's unique ability, which is even better than his skills in bed. Right, he married his stepmother Wu Yuanian, and Meng Yulu and Li Pinger entered the family one after another, bringing boxes and cages with them, all of which contributed to Ximen King becoming the richest man in Qin. After talking about wealth, Mrs. Zhu talked about sex. Meng Yulu was dressed as beautiful as a lantern figure. Finally, he said that Meng Yulu was talented and could play the yuekin. This sequence, I know Ximen King too well. Not to mention wealth first, Ximen King, who was having a heated fight with Pan Jinlian, might not be interested in her. If yuekin is not put last, Ximen King will not act in a hurry. However, why did this Bai Fumei marry Ximen King? A matchmaker who only delivers information about men and women is not a good matchmaker. If you don't want to lose face as a matchmaker, you must at least have the ability to solve problems. Wang Po solved the 2 major problems of catching a traitor in Wuhan University and threatening Wu Song with force. Meng Yulu is blocked by her ex-husband's relatives, who wants a wealthy widow to leave. The reason why sister-in-law Zhu is on par with Granny Wang is not only because she understands Ximen King thoroughly, and she can hit the mark with her words, and every sentence touches Ximen King's heart. Also because Mrs. Zhu solved all the obstacles neatly and neatly. Fin Miss Yang as your ally. Miss Yang loved money. She knew clearly that her nephew and wife had something. But he didn't care about asking anyone, only expecting a few taels of silver. The word profit comes first for the brave. Ximen King is a businessman, so he naturally understands Sister Zhu's idea instantly. The next day, I bought a meeting gift, dressed like a nouveau rich, and came to Miss Yang's door. Sister-in-law Zhu knew very well that people are so sophisticated and soft-spoken, but short-handed in handling others. She hurriedly carried Ximen King's gift into Miss Yang's house first. After accepting the gift, Miss Yang felt embarrassed and began to interview Ximen King. Sister-in-law Zhu once again showed her accurate grasp of the customer's needs. If Miss Yang wanted money, she would introduce the money. One of the richest men in Qin County opened a big herbal medicine store. The family's money is more than the Baidu. And the rice is rotten. This not only uses money to pressure Miss Yang, but also implies that she can boldly make demands to Ximen King. It's just that compared to Mrs. Wang's eloquent tongue, Mrs. Zhu lacks literary talent. See how Wang Po describes it. The money at home is more than the Big Dipper. The rice is rotten into a warehouse. The yellow ones are gold. The white ones are silver. The round ones are beads. The shining ones are treasures. There are also horns on the heads of rhinos and tusks in the mouths of elephants. Miss Yang was immediately conquered, so she put forward several conditions for becoming Baoshan, and Ximen King agreed. In line with his businessman's principle of sacrificing small capital for big profits, he immediately offered 30 taels of silver, and promised to give 70 taels of silver after the completion of the project. 2. This far exceeded Miss Yang's expectations, and she was overjoyed. It must be said that Ximen King's business prospered in the future, and he quickly became the richest man in Qin. This was related to his never sloppy actions and his willingness to spend money. Of course, Miss Yang will not have any grudge against the 100 taels of silver. She doesn't care whether Meng Yulu goes to Ximen King's house to become a big boy or a small boy. She doesn't care whether there is a better place, like Shangjuran. She is only 10 years old. It doesn't matter how he arranges his nephew. When Meng Yulu hesitated, she reassured Meng Yulu, "I will be the hard matchmaker to protect this marriage." When Meng Yulu got married, fourth Uncle Jiang led people to intercept Meng Yulu. Miss Yang fulfilled her promise. "I will show off my old face. I will be a stinky rat with that old dog Jiang Si, and I will make strong claims for you." The language used in the quarrel between the two was very lively, vividly demonstrating the creativity of working people who are not bound by ethics and education. Nit sighing said, "Jiang Si, you are an old pedant, an old slave, and an old fan. You lie and talk nonsense. When you die tomorrow, you won't be able to carry me with a rope. Zhang Sidao, you're such a talkative old slut. You make so much money to burn the tail of a target. No wonder you have no children." Miss Yang scolded, "Jiang Si, you are a thief of old Kangen, an old pig and dog. I have no children and no daughters. I am worse than your mother, who wears a monastery, raises monks, and fucks Taoist priests, while you are still sleeping." China's national curse is firstly about organs, and secondly, it is about greeting ancestors and ancestors. This is evident in this round. There are countless such national curses in the book. In A Dream of Red Mansions, the men who used national curses to a high level include Zhu Pan and Ming Yan. And the women include sister-in-law Liu and Po He, who work in the Grand View Garden. The Mandarin Duck, which was praised as the eagle of Emperor Hezong of the Song Dynasty, and the horse of Zhao Ziyang. Both are good paintings, also started with the curse of the state. Using Meng Yulu's wealth to leverage Ximen King, he used money to get Miss Yang and Meng Yulu, while Mrs. Zhu was good at using Ximen King's power. When Meng Yulu asked in private, sister-in-law Zhu said, "There is someone in the room, who is the brain." This statement is like denying that there are good ladies, but also like saying that there are only good ladies who don't work. Sister-in-law Zhu said two different things with one mouth. She is a genius. Without waiting for Meng Yulu to hesitate, sister-in-law Zhu began the temptation of wealth and power. He is one of the richest men in Qin County, and all the prefects have contacts with him. Recently, he got married to Admiral Yang of Tokyo. Who dares to mess with him, with the government as his backer? Bye. Why doesn't Fu Mei marry? Not to mention she's still young and handsome. It is completely a blue-chip stock with extremely good fundamentals. What a great lady. Why would I, as a matchmaker, dare to lie like this? The more a person lies, the more he claims that he will not lie. Regarding this marriage, Mrs. Zhu lied about her age to Ximen King, and vaguely told Meng Yulu about her age. But the initiator of the lies to Meng Yulu was Ximen King. If Pan Jinlian and Ximen King were two primitive people with extremely developed sexual desires who met each other, and were destined to start an affair with each other, then Meng Yulu and Ximen King were two social people who met and naturally followed the orders of their elders. The matchmaker's marriage begins. Meng Yulu manages the Yang family and settles accounts, but she is actually a businesswoman at heart. She is shrewd and steady throughout. She was thoughtful and cautious when interrogating Ximen King and Zhu's sister-in-law during the blind date. She was calm in preventing Jiang's fourth uncle from breaking up. She hid her unwillingness and grievance after discovering that she was cheated. She was prudent and strategic after remarrying Li Yan'e. Zhang Ailing said in Love in a Fallen City, "Your temperament hides the road you have traveled, the books you have read, and the people you have loved." Similarly, the family of origin and the work you have done are also reflected in your appearance. The contrast between soldiers and farmers, who often bow their heads, is obvious. Working hard in the shopping mall will naturally leave traces on the face. And the temperament of the main wife, who takes care of the housework, and the concubine, who is a waiter, are also different. Simon King lingered among the flowers, and he didn't need the blessing of a high IQ to see that Meng Yulu and Pan Jinlian in front of him were women from two different worlds. They are both shrewd, but Meng Yulu's shrewdness is a far-reaching resourcefulness blessed by moral character, while Pan Jinlian's shrewdness is used to bite others. They are both beautiful, but their beauties are very different. One is sexy, and the other is dignified. If Pan Jinlian was born in modern times, she would definitely take the romantic, sexy, and avant-garde fashion route. Become Fan Bingbing and Zhang Yuqi, and never miss the opportunity to show off her career as a woman. Meng Yulu's fashion line will be in line with the eldest princess of Samsung Group, Li Fusion, elegant and simple, dignified and shrewd, revealing a subtle feminine charm. Simon King saw Meng Yulu's temperament and said, "My wife has been dead for a long time. I want to marry my wife to manage the family." "I don't know what your respect is," Meng Yulu asked. "Officials value Zheng. How long have you been without my wife?" Simon King, follow the lie to the end. The villain spent his 28 years in vain. But unfortunately, his first wife passed away for more than a year. Lies decorated with truth are more deceptive. Simon Kingson knows this well. For Meng Yulu, it is important to grow bigger and make money as a steward. Simon King, who has been among flowers for many years, directly meets these two inner needs of Meng Yulu. Coupled with Simon King's handsome image, Meng Yulu fell. "You are the mirror of others." Only after an honest person has suffered a big loss will he feel the deep pain of the unpredictability of people's hearts. Meng Yulu, who has very upright views, did not question Simon King, and answered Simon King's questions honestly. She is 30. Sister-in-law Zhu, who lied to Simon King that she was only 25 years old, quickly smoothed things over. When a wife is in her second year, her golden days will grow longer. When a wife is in her third year, she will accumulate a mountain of gold. This was said again by sister-in-law Zhu when Meng Yulu got married for the third time. It's all a lie. But this time, Meng Yulu missed Shang Juran, and the next time, he found a lover and gained happiness. This happiness is not only remarrying, but actually becoming a wife, which is a counterattack against the fate of a disgraced middle-aged concubine who was destined to be sold at a low price. Even more so when her father-in-law wanted to divorce her, this beloved woman did not let the tragedy of the peacock flying southeast happen. Instead, she was beaten to pieces and refused to give up on Meng Yulu. This is true love, the ultimate happiness that every woman in the world wants. Compared with this, missing out on becoming a successor is nothing. Perhaps, the truth of life is like this. All the hardships may be the nourishment for you to lead to a better life. The test of character is based on the test of time, but whether a person is capable or not can only be determined by doing a few things. Among the women Simon King had been with, Meng Yulu had the most upright views, and was also the smartest and most capable. From her confrontation with Zhang Xi, it can be seen that in the future, only she will be able to see clearly, grasp accurately, and be stable in the complicated Ximen mansion. Zhang Xi persuaded Meng Yulu to change his mind for several reasons. In today's terms, they are: first, Simon King is a bully and a domestic violence man. Second, he has a wife, and you are bound to suffer as a concubine. Third, there are many young wives in his family, not to mention relationship difficulties, not to mention they often go whoring outside. Fourthly, Ximen's family has youthful and rebellious children, and they will be resented if they marry one. Most women would give up on everything, but Meng Yulu didn't. First, she was capable and discerning, and she could see that Zhang Xi was here to ruin her marriage to Simon King. Therefore, she was determined not to fall into the trap. Second, she has a clear vision. Third, she has strategies to deal with it. This is the maturity of Meng Yulu. Everything depends on human effort, good or bad, depends on how you act. For example, whether she is big or small, she first recognizes the social order. It is normal for men to have wives and concubines. Compared with being big or small, a man's favor is more important. If she is not pampered, she will not be happy as a wife. When it comes to men having romantic affairs, Meng Yulu is not a pure little girl. Her thoughts are similar to Jia Mu in Dream of Red Mansions. Men are all greedy. They are all the same when they are young. They turn a blind eye and don't make themselves miserable. Don't give yourself a reason to be jealous. Speaking of the Ximen King family's love for domestic violence, Meng Yulu has a better mentality. Men will not beat people without reason. Therefore, it is the last word to be diligent and cautious. If you speak wisely, walk straight, and sit upright, you will naturally not invite domestic violence. Sure enough, Ximen King insulted Wu Yueniang, beat Sun Tzu violently, hid Li Jiaoer in the snow for many years, whipped Pan Jinlian, and forced Li Ping'er to hang herself. But he never treated Meng Yulu lightly. As for how to be a stepmother for her children, Meng Yulu's mentality is even better. I am like an elder, and the younger generation will naturally respect me. Compared with other houses, the unique advantage of Meng Yulu is that it has a correct outlook on life, which Ximen Mansion lacks. In the past, this was not only a man's blessing, but also the foundation for a family's prosperity. If Meng Yulu were the legitimate wife, Pan Jinlian would not dare to cause trouble, and Li Ping'er's children would grow up safely. Song Huilian would not dare to have any unreasonable thoughts that could lead to life-threatening consequences. Ximen King's son-in-law would not have been left in the cold for years. Because of his anger, he forced Sister Ximen to death. Under Meng Yulu's rule, Chen Jingji would not be able to freely enter and exit the backyard. Ximen King's business is more likely to shift from being unclean to doing things properly. It is a pity that Ximen King did not realize the benefits of Meng Yulu throughout his life. He was greedy and cruel outside. At home, fires often broke out in the backyard, and his concubine and son were killed. After Ximen King passed away, he lost his money and official power, his friends betrayed him, his associates abducted him. His daughter died tragically, his beloved concubine disappeared, his family fortune was wiped out, and his posthumous son became a monk to atone for his sins, leaving almost everything pure and clean. It is true that a house that accumulates bad deeds will inevitably suffer disaster. However, it was Meng Yulu's ability that made her marry Ximen King by mistake. I don't mind if a man has a wife, concubines, and naughty children. He has a bad temper and occasionally beats his wife, but as a bai fume, at least, he is afraid that others will steal his wealth and sex. Faced with the last point thrown out by Uncle Jiang, it's false on the inside, but true on the outside. I'm afraid I'll trap you. Meng Yulu said, money is a rare thing in the world. How can a rich family stay poor for a long time? What fourth Uncle Jiang said earlier is true. This is exactly what he said. It didn't come true. Ximen King became richer and richer, but this wealth had nothing to do with Meng Yulu. When she left Ximen King's house, it wasn't her dowry, and she didn't take away even a penny more. Wu Yueniang was watching at the door. But what can the author do? He doesn't dare to choose the characters. In the era of Jin Ping Mei in the late Ming Dynasty, life was a mess, rushing towards the unknown darkness. A closer look at the 8th chapter of Jin Ping Mei. This time, it is Pan Jinlian's rebirth. Ximen King has been very busy recently. I am newly married to Meng Yulu, so I am considered newlywed, so my honeymoon will naturally be lingering. Marrying a daughter is a lifelong event that inevitably involves some secular affairs. Since the Dragon Boat Festival on the 5th day of May, Pan Jinlian has been resting. Pan Jinlian was just so panicked. She came from a poor background and suffered a lot of hardships, but she has always been proud. Be it Zhang Dahu or Wu Dalan, any man who has had physical contact with Pan Jinlian will be his darling. In the rules of the game she is familiar with, she is always the one with the advantage. Whether as a maid or as a woman, she strives to be the first in everything, and never admits defeat. Either frivolous or flamboyant, scold when he opens his mouth, hit when he raises his hand, whatever he wants, no taboos. She is the chosen one, and she deserves to be cared for and loved by the whole world. She is confident enough in her charm. Even Wu Song's rejection, although it was humiliating and frustrating, had little impact on her. This is a gamble, and there are bound to be winners and losers in gambling. After all, it is about ethics, and personal values are difficult to shake. Therefore, although she didn't like Wu Song's response, it was not necessarily a surprise. She had somewhat expected it. What's more, Wu Song was so fierce and angry that he obviously regarded her as an equal opponent. Confrontation is a kind of respect. Indifference is a kind of contempt. She never imagined that she would be left out and ignored. She divines, she takes a bath, she makes dumplings, she greets children, etc. It's all boredom and hard work, struggle and expectation, which eventually turn into complete powerlessness. It's no use. Jinlian King hasn't been here for a whole month, and there's been no news from him. Living to the age of 25, she had never experienced this in her life. She had an affair and killed her husband. She did something earth-shattering and life-threatening. She abandoned all the past and happily waited to enter the palace of happiness built for her by Jinlian King. The greatest sin, the decisive sacrifice, is rewarded with increasingly slim hope. Still waiting for the news that Jinlian King married Meng Yulu. The woman refused to listen. After hearing this, tears flowed down her cheeks. Drawn panicked and said, "Sixth aunt, you are so narrow. So I didn't tell you." The woman leaned against the door, sighed, and said, "Drawn, you don't know. I and him, the kindness I had in the past has been forgotten today." They couldn't help but shed tears. Looking through the book, it is common for Jinlian to cry, but this emotion is rare. As mentioned in Wu Song's letter later, Jinlian King divided himself into 8 pillars and poured down half a bucket of ice and snow. Jinlian's moment was probably very different. After crying and sighing, write a love letter. Be sad, but not sad. Resentful, but not angry. This cry is Jinlian's rebirth. The previous life experience is useless, and the love between two people is useless. Only when you give up can you wake up. She is just one of the many women in Jinlian King. Not as special as she thought. No room for fantasy. To survive and live well, she must grow up quickly. Survival first, interests first. From now on, the way to go is to control your mood, restrain your behavior, replace emotions with scheming, and compete for favor. She knew that she had to find a unique weapon and become an indispensable woman, customized specifically for Jinlian King. Goodbye, Jinlian King. Already 2 months later, Jinlian has changed. No more pretense, no more shyness. She knocked off Jinlian King's hat and tore up Jinlian King's fan. But she also kowtowed to celebrate his birthday and wrote poems with expressions on his face. During Wun University's 100 Day Memorial Ceremony, she dared to tremble with her voice. The childishness and passion in the past have turned into considerate tailoring and shoemaking. The arrogance and domineeringness in the past have turned into smooth talking, flirting, and the excellent style has turned into all kinds of active self-humiliation. Everything is precisely controlled from point to point. Before meeting Wu Song, Jinlian had already killed her past self. This time, she was really ready.
Alright, this part of the story ends here.
Want to know what happened next? Let's listen to the breakdown next time.